Okay, so this video we're going to handle ventilation, which is the last thing we're going to cover before we get into the cap shingles. Okay, so ventilation super important. You're going to want to cover a couple things with your customer before you start. Number one, they have to understand why is ventilation even needed on a roofing system, right? Also, how does ventilation work? Where does the air come in? Where does the air go out? So basically your intake and then your exhaust. And then what happens if A, I don't do it right and I mix and match components, or B, it doesn't exist. What happens to my warranty? What happens to my home? How does it affect me, right? Once they understand why it's important to have proper intake and then proper exhaust, then they can make an educated decision on what component they want to use on their house for the intake and then for the exhaust, right? So it's all basic. So let's go to the slides. If you can open me up on the slides for a second. Get me over to the ventilation part of it.
Just this one's so slow.
Here, let me show you how to do it. Watch. All you gotta do, oh, you're in the presentation mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me see. So we'll just scroll down here. Okay, because you're doing it on the web base. All right. So the idea is, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, what we're trying to accomplish here is we want to get air in at the bottom of your roof, or what's called your eave, right? Because there's sitting heat and moisture right there, and we want it to pump out all the way at the peak or the top, right? So typically most roofs will have an attic fan, and an attic fan creates a draw and just pumps out air continuously. But an attic fan is kind of like a vacuum cleaner, okay? So when it's like a vacuum cleaner, imagine I have a pile of dirt here, I put the vacuum cleaner here, it's gonna clean the middle good, but the further away you get, the less effective it is. And that's the same thing on a roof, okay? Now that you see that illustration, let me show you something. Imagine the peak of your roof is like this folder here. And then every 16 or 20 or 24 or 22, you're gonna have inches, you're gonna have a rafter, okay? So imagine it's gonna be the skeleton of your roof is your framing. And they're just gonna make a big A every single, or a triangle, I'm sorry, every single one. You're gonna have a bunch of triangles going across. So when that air comes in, let's just say this gray area is between two rafters, it's gonna enter at the bottom, and it's gonna travel between the rafters, airing out the plywood, the belly of the plywood, and pumping out the heat and moisture, okay? And then as that hot air rises, because it rises over the cooler air, it's gonna come and escape out of the top, okay? As it escapes out of the top, for every cubic foot of air that escapes, it has to pull in another cubic foot of air to replace itself, creating movement. Make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in your home today, the issue is on most homes today, is most homes today are more energy efficient. It's great for your bills, right? It's bad for the air quality in your home. Do you know why?
It doesn't ventilate. It doesn't.
Well, why it is the average home's going to produce several gallons of steam a week. That's from our bodies, the toilet bowls, cooking, showers, washer and dryer. All that steam gets in the air, okay? And then all that humidity tends to rise up with the hotter air, and it ends up in your attic space. When it ends up in your attic space, it's trying to get out. When it can't, it absorbs into your building materials, into your insulation, into your wood, into the paper under the shingles. And the longer that those materials stay damp and wet, what happens to your roof? Mold, mildew, rot, structural damage, right? What happens to the air quality of your roof if it can't get out?
It's going to be hot.
Well, it's going to be hot, but the air quality, the air you breathe in, could potentially have mold spores in it, right?
Yes.
So a lot of houses today have a very high moisture content, and it's just simply because they had the original roof installed, or it was re-roofed 15, 20 years ago, but then they went and put new windows in, put new doors in. They tightened the house up. So those old windows, even though they were very leaky, they would allow the house to sweat. So that humidity could exchange or expel out, right? Where now you tighten all that up, it has nowhere to go but up. And your roof isn't designed to handle it because you're dealing with technology from 20 years ago. right?
Yes.
So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna bring your roof up to current standard where it's able to actually expel or pump out all of that extra humidity that's building up in the home. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so in order to accomplish that, you need proper intake and then you need proper exhaust and no openings in between. So let's talk about an attic fan. When you have an attic fan on the roof, your peak is here. Let's just say we cut an attic fan in right here. It's gonna pull from the closest opening. I want it to pull from here, but if I have an opening 2 feet away, which one's it gonna pull from? Now, if it's raining out in the summertime, and it's 80 degrees but raining, when it's sucking the air in, what else is coming in with the air?
Water.
Water, creating a leak. So all manufacturers will void your warranty if you combine an attic fan with a ridge vent on the same peak, okay? So it is extremely crucial that your roofer removes that attic fan, puts new plywood in, caps off the wires, and runs a ridge vent. Or if you have a hip roof, right? The hip roof's a little bit different. The hip roof is where the roof comes down on all 4 sides. You're gonna have continuous intake all the way around. In order to have a balanced system, you wanna have as close as you can to a 50-50 between intake and exhaust. On a hip vent, the ridge is much shorter, and then your intake is much longer. So the balance is way off from 50-50. It might be 30-70, right? So there's just too much intake and not enough exhaust. So you're better off sealing it and putting 2 attic fans or 1 attic fan or 3 attic fans, depending on how big the surface or the square foot of the attic is, okay? So most roofs commonly, they go with a ridge vent.
Okay.
Okay, make sense?
Yes.
All right, any questions? All right, so let's talk about the intake at the bottom. So on the bottom, you're gonna have a soffit. Okay, you're familiar with the soffit? All right, so on that soffit, you should have vents, okay, or a vented soffit. Okay, what those vents do is just allow, when that draw is occurring, it allows air to pass through the soffit and enter into the attic space, okay? Now, when and if the home does not have a soffit or the soffit's blocked, there's just no way to get fresh air in at the bottom. There's a special product, it's called Smart Vent. Now, right here in the tablet. No, tablet.
So,
That's not the one we're gonna be using.
okay.
Okay. Okay. So,
So,
it's called Smart Vent by DCI Products. So this particular one here, they put it on the decking of the roof. They actually make a small incision on the decking of the roof, about 1 inch wide, and then they seal it with a vent, with a water screen. So what that vent does is allows fresh air to pass through and enter into the home or into the attic past the blockage point. So it could be you have attic insulation packed in at the edge, right, where it's just blocking that fresh air from coming into the soffit. Or you just may not have a soffit, right, because it's an older house. So for whatever reason you can't get fresh air in, you can always install Smart Vent, and it will always go with a course of shingle. So it can go at the edge, it can go a couple feet up, it doesn't matter, it just has to be at the bottom, okay? Now, once the intake is handled and we have fresh air that's able to come in, how are we gonna get it out? And that's where you have a variety of options on what you can use. So, at the peak of the roof, and now I always use as an illustration standpoint, local jobs that we've just done, install pictures, just so the customer could see, what we see. So for an example, I'll scroll through my photos and I will find a ridge vent that we're doing on one of the jobs. So let me see. Okay, so for an example, there's a ridge vent right there. So you can see they made a 3-inch cut all the way across, actually 3.5 inches. So it's 1 3/4 inches down on either side, creating a 3.5 inch opening, and it runs a foot in and stops a foot in. So it's never gonna run fully to the edge, right? It'll start and stop a foot in, okay? They do that because what happens is from the gable ends, you can get wind-driven rain that would cause a leak. So you have to stop at about a foot in, right? So with that being said, it has to be sealed with a product, and that product's gonna be your ridge vent, okay? And then on top of your ridge vent, you have a special flexible shingle called a cap shingle, which seals the ridge, okay? So it's a very small cut, where you're gonna cover it with a very wide piece of material so no water actually gets in,
No.
okay? But what this does is just simply creates a gap between the cap shingle and the surface of the roof, allowing air to pass through or escape. So let's take a look at a cap shingle. Let's just say here we got a cap shingle right here, okay? So the idea of the design is this bends over the ridge like that, air travels up here and goes kind of down and out, venting parallel to the decking of the roof. So it'll go down and out and then exhaust up,
Yes,
okay?
sir.
Now, there's two types of vents that are designed just like this, that vent parallel to the roof. One is gonna be this filter mesh material, which comes in a roll, and then the second one is gonna be a hard shell product, which also vents but is not a filter. So this is just air channels, okay? This product's gonna be a little harder, so it's gonna snap a stronger straight line at the ridge. So this one's gonna be more of a premium than a filter, because a filter is just gonna form fit to whatever's going on with the framing. This one has its own structure to a certain degree, gives it a cleaner look, okay?
And also filter cuts dirt and all that.
Well, no, so again, right now, what we're doing is we're just giving a general overview of what they do.
Okay.
We're not gonna talk about what's wrong with them yet, because we're gonna confuse our customer.
Yes, sir.
They first have to understand what the purpose is, kind of how it works, or how it was designed to work, and then we'll explain the differences between this one, and that one, okay? So never too much information at once, because it just overwhelms a customer who, they just wanna get a roof done, right? They wanna know they're getting something good, but they don't wanna, too much of an education on it, because they don't wanna become a roofer, they just wanna know
Yes,
it's
sir.
done right. All right, so the first type of product with the vents down in parallel is gonna be a filter style product. So with the filter style product, we've used them over the years in the past, a long time ago. And the reason why we use them is they come in a roll, and it's so easy to use. You just unroll it, you nail it down, and then when you're done and you terminate at the end of the roof, you just cut it with scissors, boom. Now I still have material left over for the next job, right? So I never have any waste with this type of ridge vent. So that's what's very beneficial and helpful for me as a company. But there is one issue with these products that we did experience. In your attic is very dusty. There's a lot of fiberglass particles floating around. And right now in your attic, look up in the air. If you ever see light, you'll see dust everywhere. Wait till the air starts moving. And it starts actually flowing out. There's going to be even more dust moving out. But the good news is it's exhausting out. Here's your problem. This filter is a filter. What do filters do? They collect stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
So just like your car filter, vacuum cleaner filter, dryer vent, you name it, if it's doing its job, it's collecting things as air is passing through, okay? So eventually the belly of this just becomes embedded with dirt, dust, you name it. And as filters get dirty, whether it's for air, water, or whatever it's filtering out, it starts to restrict the flow of whatever's passing through the filter, right? So an oil filter, less oil can make its way through, more strain. Air filter, less air, so on and so forth. So eventually this filter stops moving air. When that happens, you're gonna have a bunch of excessive heat in your attic, and then you're gonna start to have moisture building up again, okay? If that occurs on your roof, it voids your warranty, okay? So with something like this, you have to watch the filter, and you probably have to redo your ridge every 5 years, okay? But initially, it costs you less money. So this product here, which is the next style, this is more of like a hard shell, no filter product. The big picture on this one they have against everybody else is we don't have a filter. It's not gonna clog, okay, which is true. And it's not gonna roller coaster, it's gonna have a little bit straighter of a line. So it's better looking, and you don't have to change it, okay? So it sounds much better, right?
Yes.
There's one big flaw to this one and this one. They're both designed the same way, where the shingle covers and air goes down and out. That air is actually going down even with the decking of the roofing. Okay, so take a look at this illustration here. So you see this? When wind comes along here and it hits, let's just say this point here, it's gonna glide up your roof. It's gonna glide up and it's gonna hit that exhaust and push air in, breaking the siphon effect. And now it's actually gonna turn your whole system upside down to start pushing heat and moisture down. So in your slideshow video, you have screenshots of that acrylic house where they're showing them as soon as air starts moving, the whole system turns upside down, and then heat and moisture starts pushing down
Yes.
in the home, and even to the point where it starts exhausting out of the intake.
Yes, sir.
Okay, which is not good. All right. So the issue is on a system like that, it's very inefficient because it starts, stops, starts, stops, starts, stops every single time air moves. Okay. In lab testing where there's no air, it works fine. Right? But in the real world with the disruption of air, big difference. Okay? Now, depending on where your house is positioned, it could be horrible or not too bad. But either way, every time it moves, it's disrupting flow. Make sense?
Yes.
So, the vent that we actually use, and we've been using for years now consistently, is what's called a 4-foot rigid stick. Okay? What a rigid stick is, it's a baffle design ridge vent. So what I mean by that is you're gonna have these little baffles on the sides, and then you're gonna have the little air louvers that the air comes out of. This vent also is a solid surface, so the sealant and nails, everything's gonna bond down to that surface much cleaner than a filter or any other style product that's not flat, okay? So you're gonna have the superior seal across the ridge. But the real benefit of this guy is this. When this is bent over the ridge like this, and that wind comes up, it's gonna hit a wall, okay? And then there's this little lip that you have here, that little fin. So what that fin does is forces the air to jump over that louver or your exhaust, and that creates what's called a negative air pressure. When you create a negative air pressure creates a draw. And then that draw starts to pull air out of the vent even faster, okay? So with this ridge vent, this is the fastest flowing ridge vent in the industry of all brands, all manufacturers. Now, when you put a little wind on it, it's even faster, okay? So this is gonna give you what's called a 10-turn ratio per hour, or every 6 minutes is completely recycling your attic space.
Yes.
Now, when you have a system like that, all the heat and humidity excessive is out. None of it sits. If I can keep your attic cool and dry and put all these products on I showed you today, your roof's gonna last a long time. If I can't manage that, all your laminates are gonna start to delaminate because of the moisture. Right, the wood's going to get waterlogged, your ice and water's going to peel up, all kinds of stuff, because it can't adhere to a wet surface. Okay?
Doesn't matter what you put up there.
Correct. So any questions on the ridge vent?
No, sir.
To make plenty of sense.
Yes, yes.
Which one do you want on your house? Bingo, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic. The last shingle that you're going to have is what's called a cap shingle. That's the one we just discussed that goes at the ridge. So with a cap shingle, it's a special shingle that has a flexible filler, and it's just designed to be able to bend without cracking. So if it's a hot day, the shingles are very pliable anyway, your normal ones. So a lot of installers will just cut them and bend them over the ridge. The challenge is as it gets colder and more brittle, they start to crack down the middle, creating a leak. Where this shingle is specifically designed for that peak and for the hips. So you're gonna see them bending over the ridge all the way across the top, okay? Any questions on that?
No, sir.
Good. Fantastic. So, with that being said, Umit,
Yes, sir.
what do you think of my system?
Excellent.
Excellent? Fantastic. So you like it?
Yes.
Great. So, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Other than affordability, is there any reason in the world that you wouldn't want to put this system on your home?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, great. So I got to ask you, if I could fit this system into your budget, what would you do?
Go with it.
You go with it?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reconfirm measurements. I'm going to price everything out. I'm going to have you take a look at the colors, okay? So why don't you take a couple minutes to look at the colors? I'm going to work your numbers up. I'm going to do everything I can humanly possible to put something together today with you. Okay? Fair enough?
Great.
Fantastic.